How do you keep moving forward after unimaginable loss? In this episode, my dear friend Lydia opens up about losing two babies, navigating high risk pregnancies, and the strength she found along the way. We also dive into something that brings her so much joy, sharing her Pacific Island culture on the East Coast through DC Hula Girls. It's a conversation about resilience, healing, and holding on to what matters most. You don't want to miss this one. Welcome to Healing with Haley. I'm your coach, Haley Kirk. On this podcast, we dive into ways to heal, embrace, and truly love our lives. Here's my belief. So much of our suffering comes from what we believe. I'm here to help you understand your mind and question those thoughts to start your healing journey. Ready to get started? Let's go. Hey podcasters, have you ever felt like you need someone's love to feel worthy? What if that's not true? I'm hosting a free live workshop on February 8th at 9 a.m. Eastern called The Connection Code. I need your love. Is that true? In just one session, you'll learn how to stop seeking validation and feel secure in yourself, release painful thoughts keeping you stuck in unhealthy patterns, and experience real connection without fear or attachment. If you're ready to rewrite your love story, join me live. In the description of the podcast, there is an option to sign up, or if this is past the February 8th deadline, then you can sign up to get the recording, and I will show that in the podcast description below. I'll see you there. Welcome, podcasters. I have an amazing guest today. So I think Lydia is one of those types of people who is just a natural leader. She loves to get to know everybody and get people together, and she's like a connector and a networker, and I love those aspects about you. And she is a business owner, a mom. She is a dancer. Like, she has all these gifts and talents and loves women, and we're on that same frequency where we're very much so wanting to inspire and empower women. And so tell us about the origin of DC Hula Girls, the Pacific Island dance school that you have.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's, well, I started it in 2010, uh, but it stemmed from me wanting something of my own where I could create without, too many rules or like boxes, so to speak, right? I wanted to be outside of the box. That box being a just one type of dance, for example, because we have many different Pacific Island dances. So, for example, there's some groups that only focus on Hawaiian dancing, hula. That's how I grew up. But there's other dances that are just entertainment companies, and you have to do everything. You have to dance with fire. You have to have the big feather costumes and, the wow factor on stage. And so I had kind of been in a lot of different groups growing up because we're on the East Coast, and we were always kind of searching for ways to connect back to our culture because my mom's family is from Kauai, the Garden Island, which for anybody who doesn't know Hawaii, right? This is where like Jurassic Park was filmed, this
Ooh,
like
cool.
Hunger Games, like this island is like,
Wow.
gorgeous. You go out and you drive up into the mountains, like your GPS is not going to work anymore. It's just like jungle.
Cool. That's amazing.
So it's growing up on the East Coast and like going back to Hawaii in the summers um, was wonderful. And I was really blessed to have a mom that like took me to other dance schools and teachers. She wasn't too proud to like keep me to herself. She was like, you're going to go to this workshop and you're going to experience this, you're going to go
She
train with
sounds
these.
like you.
Yeah.
I'm loving this.
Right. Yeah, for real. I owe her so much. And she was really just always told me to respect each teacher that I was under. Like, if they tell you something different than I told you, then you just compartmentalize it, and you hang on to what I taught you, but you have to do it their way when you're in their class. And so it made me like super versatile and able to adapt.
Yeah.
And that's why every single group that I would dance in and perform with, in my 20s to like make money, right? And worked for a Hawaiian catering company, for example, I would just take whatever gigs. I would always just pick up whatever they taught me. Like it was just easy for me to pick things up. And people would assume that I was like doing it for a long time. And I'm like, no, like I only did hula growing up, but but the way that I feel like my mom trained me in having a solid foundation and having that flexibility and that being able to adapt really like served me well. And it helped me realize that I could be a good teacher because I knew that I could break things down in my body and be aware of my, like shifting your weight here, or what does it feel like when you're on your toes versus your heels, and explaining that to people in English, because a lot of our training is actually in Hawaiian and other languages. So being on the East Coast, I'm like, how can I teach people here that don't know the language or didn't grow up the way I grew up, and break this cultural dance down for them so that they can enjoy it and they can connect to these stories and these wonderful island sounds and these drums and these special things that we don't have over here. And so my goal was really like, how do I bring this to people that wouldn't necessarily be interested in this? Because all the groups I grew up in, it was like, oh, my mom's from Hawaii. Oh, my dad, he was stationed on, Pearl Harbor. Oh, like there was some connection. But for me, I was like, I want anyone to be able to come to my class. I want like anyone from off the street, any ethnicity, any body type, like anyone should be able to enjoy and get something out of someone else's culture, like as long as they're respectful, right, and open-minded to learning. So the main difference I feel in the way that I teach versus like a traditional school back in Hawaii is that I'm cognizant and I'm like aware that I'm working with all types of people. Some people have never danced before in their life. Some people, have ballet experience. Some people are a belly dancer, right? And you get all these different people, Latin dancers. And then I have to explain to them how this works in our culture with your body, the movement. We dance barefoot, for example. So that's one thing people have to get used to. How to tie your pareo or your sarong, right? Like the material. Just that in itself can take like 20 minutes to teach people how to tie it. So there's just like all these little cultural nuances that I feel like some people kind of get thrown into cultural classes and they get intimidated because they're like, oh, I don't know what she's saying. Oh, I don't know what she's wearing. I don't feel comfortable here. And
Mm.
so that's where I'm like, I feel like my group is different. And everyone that comes in always says that. They're like, oh my gosh, I felt so awkward at first. I felt like a robot. I didn't know how to move gracefully, but you guys made me feel welcome no matter what. And getting, like comfortable with being uncomfortable is always something I say to my students. Like, you're not gonna like wake up and be graceful the next day, right? Because we don't walk down the
Yeah.
street like flowing our hips and we just like
Right.
walk out the door. But it's like getting people okay with like the awkwardness of learning something new and then watching them grow in this confidence. It's beautiful. And some people just do it to work out and like they end up making best friends here. And then some people, they do have a cultural connection and they're like, oh, wow, it reminds me of home. I
Hmm.
have people that are like military that haven't been near their family in so long. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, thank you for welcoming me into this family. And so it's becoming something really special that is like a home away from home for some people because they didn't know where to connect on the East Coast to other islanders and just, like our studio's in our home. So it's literally welcoming people into our home. And
Hmm.
so when you come, it's like my daughter greeting you, my
Oh.
dad greeting you. Like it's all family. And we let the babies, the kids, sit and watch the moms. And if they want to get up and dance, we encourage them to dance. It's like family oriented.
So cute. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed.
Yeah. So it's really special and it's very different. Like I always tell people, you know, go just try it, just try something new, right? It's not
Yeah.
another Zumba class, it's not another ballet class. It's not like you cannot find this in like a rec center around here. You have to kind of
Hmm.
seek out this type of thing. Um,
Right.
and there are traditional hula schools around here. But there weren't many people doing what I'm doing, which is more like giving people that drop-in option. Traditional
Yeah.
hula schools, you got to sign up like for the whole semester. You know what I mean? It's a very
Right.
serious thing, just like any old school dance training. If
Yeah.
you're an old school ballerina, it's like you don't mess around, like you know. So I just try to make things very easy, cost friendly, and welcoming to newcomers. And then if they decide to stay, then that's on them. Like they can stay and they can invest more and they can buy a costume and they can be in the recital. They can join the
Hmm.
choreography classes. Like there's more for them. There's language and history and other classes that I'm incorporating for my members. But
Hmm.
for the drop-in section, it's like, hey, just come try it for an hour. There's nothing to lose. Like you're gonna break a sweat with some cool girls, and it's a safe space. I don't allow men in my class for that reason. I
Hmm.
don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Like they're already being vulnerable with me,
Hmm.
and sometimes we're sweating and we're like, you know,
Yeah.
it's very personal when you have like 20 women in a room together, right? So sometimes we'll
Yeah.
be, oh, I want my boyfriend to watch it. I'm like, sorry, you can show him like the clips that I have online. You can bring him to the recital, you can bring him to the monthly member potluck, but I don't let men come in the classroom for a reason. So I'm just very much about like safe space, sisterhood, keep that community, tight. And we we all have to trust each other, and like a lot of stuff it's like, hey, if you're having a bad day, like get it out, leave it out, and then come in here and sweat with us, and we're gonna make you feel better. It's like that kind of you know vibe and space. It's really special. I mean, there's days where I have such bad days, right, and going through my own thing, and then I go teach and it's just like, whew, like, oh my gosh, like
Like a break from the problems. Yeah.
and your mind doesn't have to worry about anything anymore, because I'm going to turn on that island music and it's going to get us jamming, and it's like we're just going to vibe and we're going to have fun, and it's yeah, it really is decompressing. It's a workout, sure, but I also offer like levels, right? So even though technically my classes are all level classes, when I teach a new move or I break down a new combo or a drill, I'm going to tell people like, this is what you should do if you're advanced. This is what you should do if you're beginner. Or if you have like knee problems. I have women in my class that are in their 60s. So some of them are coming in wearing knee braces, for example. I'm not going to make them like squat down as low as the 20-year-old. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So it's always reminding them like, hey, you know your body better than me. We've all had our things. We've all gone through things. I've had multiple surgeries. I'm a mom. Like I understand that your body might be able to do different things than someone else's body. So the cool thing about it, because it's not a partner dance, you're not affecting anyone around you. If you mess up or you misstep or you don't go bend down as low as the girl next to you, you can still be just as beautiful and graceful and be on time and look lovely with your sisters, with your dance sisters. So
Yeah, that's amazing. You said something so interesting. You said being comfortable with the discomfort. So that's something I love because, I teach the heels classes as well. And I think I love that you and I share that methodology of teaching. So dive into that for me.
yeah. Yeah, it's really, well, I put it this way, right? Like I grew up doing sports and dancing, but not everybody did. And I have to remember that. Some people have never been on a team. Some people have never been asked to buy a uniform. Some people just like maybe they don't go to the gym, or maybe they never had a personal trainer. And so I'm very like, okay, this move that feels natural to me because my mom started teaching me when I was 2 years old is not going to feel comfortable to someone brand new. So then how do I break that down for her and encourage her through it, right? And remind her, like, this is going to hurt right now. Like, you're going to actually be crunching your abs. Like, think of a sit up, right? And so I put it in some like layman's term that um, is in English again, because I could say all these things in another language, but that's not going to help the new girl. She's going to feel lost. So it's like understanding how I can break something down for someone and watching her, and then also walking over to my students. Like I'm very hands-on. I always warn them like, hey, I'm going to come touch you.
Yeah.
Like, I please don't take offense when I come right up behind you and like grab your hips or touch your stomach or touch your tailbone, like something so that you bring awareness. And one thing I do is, to bring awareness to the midsection and the hips is I make sand belts for them. So it's like a weighted belt, and it's just an option. I actually think that for me, I have some lower back problems, so I don't really like to wear it, but I give them that option. Hey, if you want to, this is something I'll make you. So it just brings awareness. I mean, just having that little bit of weight on your hips, because you can think that you're really moving something and you're like, oh, I'm killing it, you know? And then
Right.
I'm, and then you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, I'm barely moving.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So
So
yeah.
how do you help them? How do you coach them or how do you talk them through that discomfort,
Mhm.
being comfortable in the discomfort?
I mean, just like being silly and laughing at myself sometimes, and just like goofing around, honestly, like I'll be like, look, guys, I get vertigo sometimes. Like there's times where I used to dance salsa where I was like, please, no spins tonight. I can't. And a lot of my like health problems started after my babies, right? And I've had 4 pregnancies. So I have had like different things happen to me over the years. So it helps me be empathetic to others, even though I might not know exactly what their knee injury is, but like I can clearly see that she's wearing a knee brace, right? So I'm going to say, hey, like, please do what you can. I'm going to ask you to go up in your toes right now. And if your ankles hurt, like, just relax. Like, you don't have to. I'm going to teach you that you can lean your body into it. Like, if you're aware of this, back and forth, then you can make it look just as beautiful as that girl who's actually able to lift up her heels the whole time. And, so my mom had 2 knee replacement surgeries and breast cancer last year, and she still teaches 3 times a week. So I always like tell them like examples like her and say, like, if she can do it, you can do it, right? And I'll say, look, I'll dance next to my mom and you'll see that I bend lower than her, but she is like 10 times more graceful than me. Well, how is that? I mean, obviously she's been dancing her whole life, but she didn't need good knees to make it graceful. It's the understanding of your body and how other things work and the mechanics to be able to still execute the dance just as lovely as, the 20-year-old next to her that has obviously good knees.
Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah, I love that. So how have you been balancing motherhood and the DC Hula Girls?
Oh man, it is hard sometimes.
I can imagine.
Um, my kids are 8 and 10. My daughter's 8, so it's third grade, and my son is 10, fifth grade, which means they are like in 2 different sports, different activities. They do not like any of the same things. So I really scheduled my classes around my custody schedule. So I have them half the time.
Hmm.
So, for example, I teach Tuesdays and Saturdays. I don't have my kids Tuesday nights, so that way I can really focus. I can work for like 5 hours straight, like prepping my class, welcoming new people,
Hmm.
giving them the student handout, like answering any questions, starting my classes, teaching for about 2.5 hours, and then staying usually afterwards because I have a couple like assistant teachers, and so we'll regroup and stuff. But that night, like I don't have my kids. When my kids are with me, I really try to focus, on having that quality time with them because I don't have them every day. So that's so important to me. So I
Hmm.
never make them feel like dance is more important or mom's business is more important.
Yeah.
They're here sometimes, and my daughter loves to jump into class and
Oh.
she does want to be involved. So like I just got her a matching costume.
Oh my. Oh, that's so sweet. I love that.
And but I don't pressure them. Like they're aware of what I do and they know that this is what mom does. My daughter told me
Yeah.
like, hey mom, I was at school and I Googled you and I showed my friends. I'm like,
Stop it. Oh, I bet that made you so proud.
yeah, she was like so excited. She was like, that's my mom. And they're like, no, it's not. And she and she's like, look, I had to find a reel to show them that I'm your daughter. And then they believed me.
That's so cute. Oh my goodness.
So
Yeah, well,
she
you're all over
yeah.
the place. You're like on like television news. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, we're performing next week at the NMAI Native American Indian Museum in DC. Yeah, and
Wow.
this museum has I've performed there before actually, and I've done a couple things there before, but never like with my own company. So that's pretty big for me.
Oh man, that's
Yeah,
such an
yeah.
accomplishment.
They,
Ah, that's so exciting.
and they have a lot of Hawaiian artifacts there, and this particular like event is basically doctors that came together and research papers all about minorities and each paper is about a different group of people. And so we're representing the Pacific Islanders. So we're super, super humbled and proud and honored to be part of this because it's actually like these research papers are going to be becoming a book. And so we're going to be performing at the event where they're kind of presenting this to everybody.
That's so cool. Oh man, that's amazing. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and I get to bring like seven of my students, and my mom is going to come help. So, I mean, that's part of my goal and my mission with my group is to give my students cultural experiences and, to be a cultural practitioner, not just in the studio, but like outside. So, the
Yeah.
more we get hired, the more we get, these type of like prestigious gigs where it's not just someone's backyard for so and so's 50th birthday party. Like, those are fun, but I love being in museums. I love being in schools. I love, being on TV because it's just more like bringing more awareness. Like there are people here that are doing this,
Yeah.
and a lot of Pacific Islanders face the same problems of like getting displaced because it's so expensive, unfortunately, to live there. And so a lot of people move away from the islands. So that means where are all the islanders, right? So we have to, unless you really try to make your community, like you said in the beginning, it's a constant effort to build the community, right? Because it's so far and in between over here. And
Yeah.
it's just hard. Like people that I meet, they'll, oh, I live, oh, so far away in Maryland. I wish I could come to your class, right? I get that all the time. Like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
wish you were closer. Oh, I wish you had classes in Maryland, or I wish you had classes you know, somewhere else or other days, right? And it's like I can only do so much since I am a mom and I'm trying to balance this, like
Yeah.
being a sports mom and taking my kids to all their activities every week, and being involved in their school. Like I'm going to read to my daughter's class this Friday, and she's
Oh,
she's still little, so she really wants me to be like at everything I can be at.
right. Of course. Of course.
And my son is a little bit more self-sufficient. He cooks and like really watches
Oh,
out for his sister, you know.
wow. Score.
I know, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I have to remember he still needs his mom. Like he will say it sometimes, hey mom, like you spent a lot of time with Mia today. Can I, hang out with you too? Like
Oh
he's
my
just
gosh, that emotional intelligence.
right.
Like, I have a need. Help me. Oh,
Yes,
that's so nice.
I'm so proud of them, and that's one thing with divorce that honestly I just am so amazed all the time at how resilient they are and how smart they are. I mean, they
Wow.
just tell it like it is. Like they see the world sooner than I did, right? I was pretty sheltered. I was like homeschooled and I went to a private Catholic school at one point, and my parents are still together, so I didn't have to go through any of this, but the fact that they see me working and then they only see me certain days, they're so aware of like our time is precious. What are we doing tonight, mom? It is the
Mm.
weekend. What do we have planned? We want to have fun. Like they're just very like,
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's adorable.
yeah, yeah.
That's so precious. Do you, so as a mom, do you ever go through this experience where you feel um, like you're kind of pulled too much towards DC Hulas or too much towards your kids, and it's like, how do I find the balance, or do you sometimes feel guilty for doing one more than the other?
For sure. I mean, I think the days that the kids are at school, it's a lot easier, right? I can work when they're at school and I have like multiple projects always going on at once. So I just kind of
Right.
tackle what I can, right? And like look at the deadline and be like, okay, we have a performance at the museum next week. That means that's my priority this week that I have to prep for that, right?
Mm,
Staging, costumes, rehearsals, etc. But when they're not in school, it's a little harder. So I had them for like Christmas break, and then we had that snow week. So we had 3 weeks straight where they were not in school, and I was like, oh my gosh, how do I work?
you're like, no.
And I don't want to put them in front of the screen the whole time. So it was really like communicating to them, hey, like mom needs a couple hours on the computer. You guys need to take care of this, 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 and this. And then once that's done, you're allowed to like watch a movie or a show for a little bit. But I'm really strict with screen time. So again, it's kind of like, hey, I
Mhm.
buy my son novels, like go read, you might need to read to your sister for a little bit to entertain her because I can't entertain her like the whole time. And just
Mhm.
making them aware like we are a team. I need all of you to be part of this team and working, together towards these goals. And so even giving my daughter a job within DC Hula Girls has been really great. So she knows she's the greeter.
That's
She knows
so
she can,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
She's the
She
great.
she's
I
like,
cut you off.
oh yeah, yeah. She's no, she makes signs. So when people come in, like how much is am I selling like a flower for? How much am I selling the sarongs for? And then she's like, okay, this is my mom's Venmo. Like she even put it on her phone watch. So yeah, she's like, okay, you can pay me, ready to go. Like, so, making
Wow.
them like reminding them that they're important and that this is all to help us in the
Right.
end. I told them, look, I would love to take you to Hawaii. Like, I haven't been able to take them yet. And it's just really expensive, right? And so even though
Hmm.
we have family to stay with on multiple islands, it's still like 3 plane tickets to Hawaii. And so I'm like, guys, like everything that I'm doing is for our family
Right.
and to stay tied to our culture so that you understand where you came from, and so on and so forth. And it's a lot of stories and things that I haven't even told them yet, but I feel
Right.
like I'll tell them when we go there, and see certain places and can tie the history together, take them to the palace, be like, yes, we had kings and queens, right? Like, but when you walk
Yeah.
in the palace in Hawaii, that's so much easier to talk to your kids about um, than just sitting over here in Virginia, like with a book, right? So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's so much research actually. I'm not sure which Ivy League school did it, but there was an Ivy League school who did research on kids who do chores
mm,
that have things that are told of them to help with the family. And I think involving your kid in your business, oh, that's so cool. That's amazing. What benefits have you seen so far from that?
I think confidence is like number one. I mean, I told my daughter, like, she wanted to sell lemonade, right, or something this summer. And I was like, okay, but we have to plan this out because we live in a dead end area. No one's really going to walk by us. How are people going to see us, And I said, well, you could sell it before my classes. I'm sure the dancers would want to have some lemonade. And so she was out there ready to go. Like we had a show and then we had a class. So some of us were coming in really tired from being out in the show. It was in the
Hmm.
summertime, right? So we were literally hot and like everyone bought lemonade. And then she had signs on the door, and she was so smart. She said, "Free magic show when you buy lemonade." I
That's
didn't
so
like,
cute.
yeah, and my son does magic, so she was like pimping him out basically. And he was like, "Wait a minute, do I make any money from this?" Like she just basically told
Like
me I
you're
was
doing
gonna
this.
yeah, she's like very bossy. She is super um he's so sweet and calm, so he just kind of goes along with stuff.
Aw, the older
But
brother.
but he's very introspective. Like he's always thinking and always observing. So he's the one that I don't even have to ask him at this point. Like I started teaching him to cook a while ago, but when I come up from class, it's like 9:30 at night and I haven't eaten. He's like, Mom, dinner's on the stove for you. Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
Like, and it's like healthy. It's like chicken, broccoli, rice.
Wow.
And I'm
And
like,
he's 10?
yeah.
What a
So I'm like,
sweetie
I
poo.
exactly. And I'm like, there's no way like every 10-year-old is like this. Like I know I'm very
No.
blessed and I know that he's kind of wise beyond his ears in some ways. And then we have that,
Yeah.
the opposite firecracker, my little girl that's just like, all over the place. But with her, it's just about channeling that energy, right? So as soon as you give her
Yeah.
that, yeah, you can totally set up a lemonade stand. Well, now she's occupied for the next hour because she's making the signs, she's figuring out the lemonade recipe. She's like, now
Yeah.
she has somewhere to channel that energy.
Hmm.
And I see so much of myself in her. So I can't.
Oh, I do too. Yeah. Just the way she sounds. Yeah. And it's so funny that word bossy. I think being bossy is really great because I
Mhm,
think a lot of people don't like to take leadership roles. And I
mhm.
think people like you and your daughter who are just naturally leader-like, I think it's great to have bossy energy because it's like, hey, I know what to do. Here's what we're gonna do. Da 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 da. And it's like we need people that are bossy, especially
Yeah.
women. I think women are great leaders and I look up to people like Sarah Blakely, the CEO of Spanx. Have you heard?
Yes.
Oh, I'm obsessed with her because she leads through feminine energy and she was told forever that she had to like tap into her masculine and just change her whole personality and she never listened to that advice and
Right.
she's like the first self-made billionaire in America, so it's no big deal.
Yeah, amazing.
That's a female. That's a female.
Exactly. I think
But
it goes with like advocacy too, right? Like if you don't have a little bit of like that bossy energy in you, it's hard to advocate for yourself because generations before us were taught to just kind of like be demure and sit and be quiet, right? And just like always let the male lead. And it's, being a single mom, my kids see me doing everything.
Right.
There's no, like, their dad and I don't have much contact, and he does his thing when he has them, and I do my thing when I have them. But I'm the
Hmm.
one that really does all the extracurriculars and taught my son how to cook, and they definitely understand that things are different at his house versus my house, but my kids are very grateful for both experiences, I think, and that helps
Yeah.
them understand the world more. Like, not everybody's going to do things the same way, but
Right.
my daughter has learned to speak up for herself,
I
and
love it.
just be like,
Yeah.
hey, this is what I need, and this, or this is not okay. This kid did this to me at school, and I want you to talk to the teacher about it, mom, because I didn't like that boy talking to me like that today. And she comes home like that and just she tells me
Wow.
everything. So I'm so
Yeah.
proud of her for already like knowing to
Yes.
advocate for herself and
Yeah.
asking for help too, you know?
Ah, that's so powerful. And I wonder, I bet you putting her in those, small but still leadership positions, right? Like it's it's funny how often we can like play it off as like, oh, this isn't like a big deal, but for them it's everything, right? Like they're like, oh, I'm contributing
Yeah.
something, and for them it's big, for them it's huge. Like just a small example, like I've started having Israel throw away his diapers when
Oh.
I'm done changing it. He like he gets so proud. Like he's like,
Yeah.
I know exactly where to put this and I know what the deal is. And like sometimes I'll just be done changing the diaper and he'll just get up and do it. Like it's like I don't have to ask anymore.
That's
Sometimes
so cool.
it's like it's exciting. It's exciting to watch your kids become these little agents of uh like they have these like leadership skills. They're developing these skills that are going to set them up for a lot of success. So it's like really exciting.
It's wonderful to watch. I mean, day after day, week after week, month after month, they like continue to surprise me and surpass my expectations,
Yeah.
It's just it's such a blessing, motherhood. And so I think uh, every day just kind of prioritizing it, right?
Hmm.
Being reminding my kids, like, even if I'm not with you today, I'm still your mom every day. Like, you better FaceTime me or I'm gonna be like, what's going on? You know, like
Yeah.
staying connected and uh, you know, so they know that they're important, right? So they know that nothing else to me in this world is as important to them. That's like my goal. I don't want them
Yeah.
to ever think like my own hobbies or whatever, but because to me, people come and go, right? I'm divorced, so people come and go. I've experienced great loss and other things. So, but these two, rainbow babies for me, I'm like, you guys are it. Like, if I get nothing else in this life, it's the pleasure and the, utmost reward is being your mom. So I just tell them that all the time. And I think just being very open and vulnerable with them, they've seen me in low moments as well. And I apologize to them if I lose my temper, just constantly like being honest and open with them has really helped like our bond, be
Yeah.
be really like special and real.
I love that piece. Gabor Mate, he's right now the leading researcher in trauma. Uh, and he says that no matter what we do as parents, like there's always opportunity for reparation and taking that really seriously. And I love that you said that. Like I think there's always because we are going to mess up. It's not if, it's when. And that's been the best remedy for my mom guilt is that it's okay. I can say sorry. I can say, let me rewind. That's not the mom I wanted to be. That's not okay what mom just did. And I think that is like so healing for them. Like it's so healing for them and for us, even because we're kind of like reparenting ourselves a little bit as we're parenting. It's like, it's so healing. It's so healing. I'm wondering if this relates with you. I think for me, when I had Israel, and I'm a new mom, right? Like my son, he's 2. For me, it was more of a fire, more of a why to start my businesses. Like I just couldn't bring myself to send him to daycare or like I couldn't do it. And I'm not judging moms that do that. I just me
Right.
for me personally, it was like, how can I make this work? Like, can I
Mhm.
work from home? Like, can I just can't. Like I just can't do it. How much of that plays into you being a mom and an entrepreneur?
Oh, it's a huge part. I think, I mean, to rewind a little bit, right? Like I was married when I started my company, so I had a different type of support system back then. Uh,
Yeah.
I could, and I wasn't living in the same place I do now. So I would like leave the babies with him to come to my mom's studio to teach, for example. And so
Mm,
there's a different type of support, like physical support that I used to have and also financial support, right? So I could
right.
just be like, "Hey, I want to start this website. Can you help me?" Like da 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 da. And he was there, and he was the main breadwinner. So I was kind of carefree about everything when I first started it back then.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of it as like a potential full time, you know.
I see. Uh-huh.
I- It was more like, "Hey, I've always danced. It would be cool if I could get back into it. I just had the babies. I gained weight. Let me like dance again. Let me lose some weight. Let me, you know."
It was
Um,
more something like to do for fun post baby.
yeah, and I
Okay.
mean, it was like I would teach, but then I wouldn't perform that much because I was still nursing and like going through all these stages. But I started dancing again when my son was 4 months old, so I really like jumped right back into it. So to
Yeah.
yeah, so some classes I'd like have him strapped to me during the
Oh
break.
my,
Yeah.
stop it. Stop now. That is so cute.
Yeah, and it's a
So you
hula.
would be taking classes or you'd be teaching classes while he was strapped to you?
At that time, I was taking classes, and
Oh
then
my God.
I ended up teaching before he even turned one. So I mean, it was kind of a quick turnaround, but
Yeah.
I was part of like this other big group that was out in Silver Spring. So I would truck out there like every Sunday, stay out there for like 4 hours. It's like a very big commitment when you're in a traditional school. It's a long day, and so if you're bringing a baby that's nursing, it's kind of a whole other thing that you're committing to, right? It's like
Oh, I'm
yeah,
obsessed with that. I love that. You're
which
such
I
a baddie.
thank you. But I try to remind people when they tell me, "Oh, I have kids." Oh, I'm like, "Please bring them. Like, please don't let
Which
whatever."
I
Yeah,
want to give you kudos for because it's not normal in a
right,
dance environment. It's
right.
it's very much so, no, this is an adult space. They might have kids classes, but not like
Mhm.
infant, like
Right.
4-month olds. Not at all. I think that's maybe what's kind of special about
Mhm.
the environment of hula, right? Or you said Pacific Islander dances?
Yeah, in
How you
general,
call it?
I think because we all grew up doing it in the family, right? Generally speaking, your aunt, your mom, your grandma is the one teaching you and handing down these traditions and stories. So it's
Wow.
completely normal for us to have the babies there and the kids there. And
I
then
love
that
that.
way, also, I feel like I know what mom guilt feels like, right? I used to be in groups where, yeah, I would leave the kid for hours and then they'd be with their dad and I'd have to come home. And I still felt mom guilt, even though they were with family, because it's just
Right.
any time away from your baby is hard, especially during the
Oh,
first few years. And
oh yeah.
I nursed like each of them for 2 years. So, I know it's just a hard thing, right? Even
Yeah.
your body, right? Your body starts to go through the meltdowns and you're like, oh
Oh
my gosh,
yeah.
my body's missing my baby. Like you're
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a crazy bond. You really can't explain it. It's it's
right.
it's very real.
And I had lost two babies before, Noah and Mia. So, I mean, for me, I never wanted them to be in daycare. I literally was like, nope, no one's taking my baby. I want my baby.
Mm,
It was either my parents watching them, my ex-husband watching them, or me watching them. Like nobody else is allowed to watch my kid. I was super,
yeah,
super adamant about that.
I understand.
So, you know, I think to me, it's like, okay, some of my students are driving over an hour to come to me, and I'm so honored that they love class so much that they continue to make that drive, right? And sometimes in traffic, dude, you know how traffic in the DMV is? It's just awful sometimes, depending on the
Right.
time of day or what's going on with construction. And so my dancers often, I'm feeding them sometimes, right? Like whatever I have, I'm just like, hey, I know that you've been on the road since 9 a.m. You're leaving my house. It's 2 p.m. We did so much work today. please have lunch with me, right? That's the Islander way. We
Uh-huh.
just invite people into our home, we feed them, we take care of them, and they become family. So I am blessed that my parents are still here. I know a lot of people don't have that, right? So
Mm.
for some people, it really does become like a home away from home, because they
Yeah.
don't have their cousins here and they don't have their uncles here and they don't have their grandmas and grandpas here. Their family's still back in Samoa or Hawaii, or maybe they,
Hmm.
like some of my military dancers, right? They're from other places that where they lived, there was like a much bigger Polynesian community. And so over here, it's very small. So they're willing to drive over an hour to come here because
Right.
it's so special and rare. And so they make that drive like once or twice a week, some of them twice a week, so it's definitely something that I never want someone to be like, oh, I have to leave my baby to go take care of my self-care. I mean, I understand some moms prefer it that way,
Yeah.
because right, their baby's going to distract them, and so they try to leave the baby home with the dad or the older siblings, right? And I'm so glad they have that support system. But me as a
Right.
single mom, I'm like, if you don't have the support system,
Yeah.
please know that we are your support system. And
That's
so
amazing.
there's a
Well,
couple of
I think that for women, it doesn't even have to be that you're totally separate from your
Mhm.
baby, but you're just like you can be separate from your baby in mind and body. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like I remember I was on class A and I still had Israel and we did
Mhm.
our competition. So it was like it was so nice for me, even though I brought Israel to my rehearsals, because like you said, I was on a nursing thing and I was like, no, like I have to bring him with me. And it's just even though he was there, I was doing something for me. I
Yes,
wasn't in like mom mode. I
exactly.
was in like, oh, I'm something more than a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Being a mom's amazing, but what else am I? Like
Mm-hmm.
is what else are the facets of me?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Like,
getting back to who you were before, right? Like that's huge for me because of the divorce. I felt like who was Lydia before I got married? Like what did Lydia like to do? What did she do in her free time? And I had to like sit there and think about it. And I kind of explored different things for a while and just kind of bounced around and tried a bunch of different dance classes. And then I was like, dude, go back to your roots. Like go back to your roots. This is
oh,
like you were in Hawaii, like training with, these girls that all went on to like compete and were amazing. And just remember what you come from. Like you were sitting there, you were picking the rocks off the beach, you were making the lei with the tea leaf. You know how to do all these things. Why don't you like get back to that and
yeah.
share that with people? There's enough Latin dance classes around. There's enough, right? Because people have asked me to teach multiple things over the years only because they assume I'm good at it, even though I'm like, no, I just am really good at copying. Like, but that's not what I feel my strength is in. So I always tell them if you
Mm,
dance class, it's going to be Pacific Island dance class, right? And we can go through
yeah.
these different styles and see what you want to do. But I was making my own poi balls, for example, which are from New Zealand when I was 10 years old. And that's where you like spin and do tricks. And I learned how to do it with fire in my 20s. So I like,
Fun.
spin fire and stuff. And I'm like, why don't you get back to that? Like, and once you do feel like you're in your power and you're in that happy place, it brings something out of you, right? And other people can see it. And people used to be like, you're glowing. Like, how are you glowing? You lost two babies. You had a divorce. How are you glowing? And I'm like, because I think you just have to love life, and the inner peace doesn't come from like one outside force. It's like, it really is inner peace. And whether you have faith in God or not, I think it's important that everyone finds their inner peace so that no matter what happens in life, like no matter how bad it gets, like you're gonna be okay and you believe that and you can get back to doing the things you love and not feeling guilty about it.
Hmm. Wow. And so you mentioned you had these three very huge episodes of grief. Has dance played an impact in that healing journey and what was it?
Yeah, for sure. I think movement, kind of like you said before, it just kind of gets you out of your head a little bit.
Yeah.
So when you're grieving, you can be like hyper fixated on something and just keep replaying these traumatic events in your head and kind of feeling confused and feeling like why. And you start to ask all these questions. And whether or not you're the type of person that journals or whatever it is, but you have to have some type of outlet, I feel like, for grief. Maybe you don't feel comfortable talking to a grief therapist, but maybe you feel comfortable singing and you need to sing it out. I don't know, like everybody's different. But for me, because I grew up dancing, dance really did help. And at least with our stories in hula, right? They're not all happy stories, right? There's
Mm.
stories that it's very appropriate to look sad or to look serious or to even cry. So sometimes I would be dancing and I would just start crying like mid-dance, because it's so moving and I'm
Yeah.
connecting to the song and the story and I'm relating it to my own life. And I mean there's tons of drama in Hawaiian, like, how do you say it? Like the legends, right? So
The
for
folklore.
yes, exactly, the folklore. So one story, for example, like our fire goddess, she ends up killing her sister out of jealousy because she was supposed to go find this man that she wanted to marry. That she ends up falling in love with the guy. So then Pele, the fire goddess, literally kills them. And there are so many songs written about it. And it's just like, yeah, it's literally like we have our own drama series. You know how people watch like Telemundo?
Oh, yes. You have it in dance form.
Yes.
That's
And so it's
cool.
it's pretty cool because when you're expressing these things, right? Like how do you show that someone's crying, right? So I mean, we might bring our hands down and be looking down and we might be shaking our fingers with it to
Wow.
show the tears and
Wow.
different things. Yeah, but then because she's a fire goddess, maybe we have another motion of like an exploding volcano.
Mm.
And so it's very layered, it's very poetic. And so
Yeah.
thankfully for me, I feel like I was able to kind of lose myself in the dances, in the songs. And even if my mind was kind of blank sometimes, depending on the day, right? You're like asleep deprived, whatever's going on in your life. Just music is comforting, dance is comforting, being around like good community is comforting.
Yeah.
So you might be like 50% one day. You might not be 100% at your best, but I still feel like showing up and being a part of a community is huge. And at least for me, going back to my like happy place, my comfort zone, putting myself back into classes and studying again, like that really felt me feel like me again. Like even though these
Yeah.
bad things happened to me, I'm still me. Like I'm still, you know, made in his image and likeness. I'm still Lydia. Like I'm still God's chosen daughter. Like and saying positive things to yourself. And I was not really in grief therapy or anything. I mean, I probably should have been,
Mm.
but I think I just had enough outlets. I had like artwork created for the, memories of my children. I had planted like a rose bush in my backyard. I had like different things that I did over the years to remember them by. I have different
Wow.
tattoos, everyone expresses themselves differently, but I think it's important that you get it out, whatever, not to hold it in and just like hold on to it too tight because then it's going to eat you alive. So for
Yeah.
me, I have like no problem talking about them because to me that keeps them alive. It reminds me that I'm human. It reminds me that my motherly love never goes away for them. Whereas some people, it's like super uncomfortable to talk about. And I always say, look, just if you have someone that is experiencing a loss or went through something bad, just say you're sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for your loss. And that's it, because anything else, it kind of gets a little bit cringe and corny sometimes when people are trying to put their own 2 cents in
Yeah.
and you don't know what that person's belief systems are. And, like how some people are like, oh, I'm sending healing light. I'm like, oh God, please no, don't say that to me. So I learned over the
Yeah.
years, just kind of like, uh, I'm a very like just tell it how it is person. So whether it was going to a doctor's appointment for Noah and Mia after I had experienced my losses, I would just say that to the doctors, like just cut to the chase. Like please don't sugarcoat it. Please don't act like I'm gonna break because anything that could have broken me, like it would have already broken me.
Mm.
Just my first son was only alive for 3 hours and
Oh,
my second
wow.
one was stillborn. So that's giving birth to a dead baby. So I'm like, I've already been through the most traumatic things that could have happened to me. So you're not going to break me, right? Like, just tell
Yeah.
me whatever you need to tell me, whatever the bad news is, just lay it on me and then like, I'll figure it out. And I think that's part of the like can do attitude that like entrepreneurs have to have. I'm always like a fixer and I'm like, just tell me the problem. I'll fix it, right? Just
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like please don't like worry about it hurting my feelings. Just tell it how it is, and then we'll go
Hmm.
from there. Um, we'll face this head on. Like I was ready to quit my job because they had told me that my son like was probably had like like different things going on with him. His hands were twisted, his legs were twisted, he'd need multiple surgeries. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like no problem. I'm just going to stay home. I'm just going to quit my job and I'm going to raise this baby and we're going to have a lot of doctor's appointments. So like
Wow.
I feel like things don't scare me, and the doctors were scared to tell me, what may have occurred, which was actually him passing away. It didn't occur to me because they really weren't completely forthcoming. It was more like, this is what we see on the ultrasound. This is what we see on the amniocentesis. And I'm like, I don't see a problem here. This is my child you know like there's nothing that could be wrong with my child that I wouldn't accept. Like I'm very pro-life, so there's nothing you can tell me about my child that's going to make me less of his mother. So that was
Wow.
my attitude, and my ex-husband and other people really didn't understand me and the way that I was handling things, but I was just like,
Yeah.
this is my child. Like I don't whatever you say, it's my child, right?
Oh, I love
So
that.
yeah, so I mean, I think advocating for your kids, like it starts from the very beginning sometimes, right? And for me, that was like researching hospitals, changing doctors, figuring out where I wanted to go next because I didn't like my first experience. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. I I think it's kind of interesting when we talk about grief and loss. Like we're not taught how to grieve, and it's actually kind of interesting. I've dived in a tiny bit. If we look back at like the Puritans, they were surrounded by death, and they accepted it. They would make the coffins, they would bury the ground, they would dig, and they would prepare the outfits. Like they were so involved in the death process, and I feel like we're just so removed from it that
Mhm,
it's just um, it's this uncertainty, it's this fear, and then when it happens, it's almost like it blindsides us a little bit. I don't know if I'm saying that word right, but
mhm.
it's
No
it's
one can prepare
interesting.
you. Yeah. It's not something that they like teach you in elementary school what to do when we might have like a dog die when we're little, right? But that's like it.
Right, right. Yeah. There's another guy who I love. His name is David Kessler, and he is a grief. He wrote the five stages of grief. He co-authored it, and then
Okay.
he wrote another book called The Sixth Stage of Grief, which is Finding
Mm,
Meaning. And
mm,
so I I love his work because it's a way I have never heard about grief before. And he's one of the questions I thought was really interesting that he gets asked is like, how long does it take someone to grieve? And he was
mm,
like, it doesn't matter, right? Like it's going
mhm,
to be so different to each individual.
mhm.
um, and he'll give approximates, but he's like, these are approximates. Like
Yeah.
one person's grief process could look completely different from another. And I
Mhm,
was like, yeah, like, and just because someone's not crying doesn't mean that they're not
mhm,
grieving. And I was like, because I remember my dad, he lost his mom when he was very young. Like he
mhm.
was 24 or something, and he lost her really young.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't cry though, but and I
Mhm.
was like,
Like many
aren't you
men.
sad? Yeah, aren't you sad that your mom died? And it's like, that's such a cruel thing to say. Like, just
Mm,
because he's not crying doesn't mean he's not grieving. So
right.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your grief process and like what you learned.
I think that it, well, I will say, like, I did not read about the five stages of grief until like a decade later. Like, I went through this very young. So I was married by the time I was 23, and then I had two losses by the time I was 25. So
Oh my God. So 23, you
within
were
the
married?
first, I was within the first, I was married like I was almost 23 when I got married.
Uh-huh.
And then within the first year, we lost our first child. So we had like gotten married in April, and literally we had him the following April. And
Uh-huh.
the same year in November, we had our second loss. So it was like less than a year and we
Like
had two losses.
oh my God,
Yeah.
one after the other.
Yeah,
Jesus.
and each loss was very different. And I think the main thing that I learned was men and women grieve very differently, and it
Mm-hmm.
really like affects your relationship. And you do now have like this trauma bonding. So there's this whole thing that you went through with someone, right? But at the same time, a woman losing a baby is very different for the man because the man never had the connection with the baby. And they
Right.
say,
The
like,
biological one. Yeah.
exactly, like the man is, I'm sure everyone's different, but they say that men more connect to the baby once the baby's born, but women
Mm-hmm.
connect before that. We feel the kicks and we feel the everything, right? So I felt really like bad for him because it was almost like I kind of had a little bit of time with the babies and he didn't.
Oh
It
yeah.
was
Yeah.
very,
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
yeah, it was very interesting. And I think also as a woman, like we aren't quite taught the same way like men are growing up. I mean, even though I said like I'm a fixer and I'm a doer and I like to like just take charge and do things, people could say that I'm in my masculine sometimes, right? I mean, if you're like looking at it in that perspective, but for an actual man who was, you know, my husband at the time and supposed to be the father of my children, right? I could just see that he was at such a loss, like he could not fix this for us, right? The man is supposed to protect and provide. And it was
Yeah.
just so hard on him in like a different way that it made me like really have grace for him. So even though I felt kind of disconnected at times, like I knew that the loss hit him hard. It was just kind of like you said, I didn't see him cry a lot. I just knew, like, you know what I mean? You just know like they're sad and they're grieving in their own way. I was a very loud griever.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
Like
Yes.
scream, cry, blast
Yeah.
my radio, go dance, cry some more while dancing. Like I
Mhm.
don't care who's, you know what I mean? I'm just like loud anyway. So, but I
Right.
think it was more of a silent thing for him. But that was very interesting. And so I always like think about that, like men and women grieve differently. You can't tell anyone how to grieve. You can't judge the way they're grieving. Like you said, they may not look like they're crying, but they are going through something and everyone kind of deals with things differently. And you have to be aware and be careful, right? And look out for signs of, because some people could try to self-medicate or some people could try to, right, like do other things. Thankfully, we never had like those problems, but I definitely think that grief counseling, if someone's going through something, like they really should, because I feel like I just was, like you said, blindsided and I didn't know what the heck to do and what I was doing. And I
That's a
didn't,
lot.
you know what I mean? I had just gotten married. So like I had read the like five love languages book, but I never read about five grief stages. There were, we were
Yeah.
we were newlyweds and we were young. So you never, and we were both healthy. Like we were both athletes. We were both just, you never think that this is going to happen to you. You
Right.
hear about people having like older women have problems. That's what they say. I'm like, but I'm young. Why is this happening to me?
Right.
So finding, honestly, like going on Google and Googling a lot, being my own little search engine to see what was going on and to hear about other women's experiences helped me a little bit to feel not alone because
Yeah.
like all the women that I would talk to, they were just shocked. Like I have not met other women that went through what I went through. Like I just didn't. I met people that had miscarriages, but I didn't have a miscarriage. I gave birth to my son. He was alive for 3 hours. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. So I
Oh,
didn't have anyone to really talk to relate to, you know?
yeah.
And then just the second loss being the fact that we thought like everything was going so well with her. It was like we were so looking forward to it that I think it almost hit us harder. Like, why are we being punished? Like, is something wrong with us? Like, you just start to really question everything that's going on. And even family members, older people that are super religious would kind of say inappropriate things.
Oh my God.
And it was just like, please go away from me. So they were,
Yeah.
and it's like you're already in your head a lot. You're already kind of
Right.
punishing yourself a lot. And so that's what I mean about like, if anyone out there is listening to this and someone is going through a loss, please, don't try to like make this into a theological like lesson or like some biblical lesson and like just say you're sorry for the loss, bake them a lasagna and like move it along, you know?
I'm a lasagna.
Because
I love that.
they're probably too depressed to get up and cook. Like, you know,
Literally,
send
yeah.
them some flowers and like ask them if they want to go on a walk to get them outside and get some vitamin D and like, you know, something that's practical. But
Wow.
once people start to kind of diagnose you, it just you get really it starts to get uncomfortable and you know, like you've
Mhm.
already been through enough. You don't need people trying to psychoanalyze. Like unless you've put yourself in therapy and that's your choice too go seek help in, right? But
Right.
when these outside people from different cultures and different generations start to kind of try to tell you why they think it happened, it's like, you know what? But for me, I did feel empowered by the fact that I finally understood the medical reasons behind everything. And so I was confident to like try again. So
Yeah.
we had like a 5 year break and I researched a lot and basically needed a stitch put in my cervix to prevent more losses. So I have a weak cervix, that's why I lose the babies. And I'm Rh negative, which means my blood is O negative. My kids come out B positive or some other type of positive. My body doesn't recognize them. They're kind of recognized like a foreign object in my body. And so my body goes on the attack and attacks their blood supply. So
Oh,
basically, Noah needed a blood transfusion within the first week he was born. A couple days after he was born, he needed a blood transfusion. So even though we were able to like get him delivered to the full term, thanks to the cerclage stitch, there was something else going on that they hadn't caught. So it was, you know, again, like a traumatic birth. It was like 7 days in the NICU, you know, he couldn't eat or drink anything for like 24 hours before the blood transfusion, like super stressful. And then with Mia, it was like, okay, now we know all my problems. What are we going to do next time? And they're
yeah.
like, okay, like if you go to John Hopkins, they can do intrauterine blood transfusions, which means they're actually putting a huge needle into your stomach and then going into your umbilical cord, sending the blood to the baby that way.
Wow. That's
It's like,
crazy.
yeah. And it's beautiful if you think about it, the like how many babies are saved because of science, right? And
Right.
so I'm so thankful that like I researched, I found a great doctor, I went to a different hospital, I completely changed, you know, my neonatal like doctors, everything, because I had like multiple doctors, obviously, at this point. I had 27 ultrasounds with Mia, and she had 4 blood transfusions before she was born. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Damn.
And she was in the NICU for a week as well, but it was less stressful because it was like we were more prepared. And in a way, of course, it was stressful during the pregnancy. Every single time I did the transfusion, it was scary. They had to like temporarily paralyze her so that they make sure they're not poking her with the needle when it goes in. And you have to wait like 24 hours to let this, you know, wear off, make sure that the baby's okay, that she's not actually been hurt by the medicine that paralyzes her. And you can't eat or anything because there's danger of going into labor every time. Every time they stick a needle in you, your body wants to go into labor. And so you start contracting. So it's like extremely painful process going through the blood transfusion for me. But for Mia, I'm glad that she didn't have to go through what Noah went through, where it was
Mm,
outside of me, right? So it was almost like I felt like I was taking better care of her,
that's
you
interesting.
know?
Yeah.
Like taking it on myself during the pregnancy and being more proactive and being more careful and you know doing all my research so that she would be okay when she was born and she was great she did not need another blood transfusion after she was born.
So wild, Lydia. Oh my God. I've never heard of that before in my life.
Yeah, they actually had what do you call it, like interns or like college students watching the transfusions because it's pretty rare and the reason
I've
it's
never
so
heard of
rare.
that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and the thing is, most people are not going to because they'll give you a medicine at the doctor. Like if you go to the OBGYN and you're Rh negative, they're just going to give you a shot of Rogaine, which is a medicine, right? But I'm desensitized to it because, of course I am. Like as if, you know, if I didn't have any other things going on with my weak cervix and everything. But they said it's because of my losses that if I had not been given the medicine, like in pregnancy number one, then I kind of became desensitized to it. And every single pregnancy gets harder. So for anyone out there that's had a pregnancy scare or a pregnancy issue, they probably have heard this before, but whatever issue you have, it just gets amplified every single time, right? So for Mia, it was worse than for baby number one. So maybe what they didn't catch for baby number one, it was very visible for baby number four, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's crazy, but they're my
Wow.
miracle babies.
Yeah. Oh, what a story. What a story. I think when it comes to going back to grief, I think this was kind of, tell me your experience with it. Something that he said that I thought was so wild is that like our brain would much rather find guilt, like a reason why we were the ones that caused the loss, right? In some way. And like an example is like, oh, if I only had driven my drunk friend home, then he wouldn't have died. Or if
Mhm.
only I listened to my mom, and I wore more modest clothes, then this abuse wouldn't have happened to me.
Right.
And it's like, it's so much better for our brain to find the guilt that we played than hopelessness.
Mm,
And that blew my mind because the idea of being hopeless is so much more deep and
mhm,
scary and painful than guilt.
mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think thankfully for my faith, I never ever gave up hope. Like I always thought I was still going to have children, but I think the complete lack of control over, you know, your body, what's happening to your body, your baby, that you're supposed to be protecting. Like for me, it was more that feeling of helplessness, not hopelessness. It was more like, I can't fix this. I'm not like nothing I'm doing is helping. It doesn't matter how many times I work out. It doesn't matter how healthy I'm eating, right? My pregnancies are difficult, period. And so it kind of used to piss me off sitting in the OBGYN's office, seeing all these like healthy pregnancies, I was just like, at this point, I'm sure I have like PTSD, right? I didn't know what it
Mm,
was back then, but I would be triggered because I would see women like complaining about their cramps, but they're 8 months pregnant. I'm like, do you know how hard it is for some of us to get to 8 months? You know,
mm,
um, like, oh, my back hurts. Oh, I'm like, I will take all the back pain, honey, but like, give me a healthy baby. Right. And so I was so much more aware of like how precious life was. And I think, unfortunately, I did see some hopelessness in other people around me, but I think I never felt like that. I mean, I went to some services for people that had lost babies, like some religious services, some secular services, like very sweet ceremonial things, and different doctors would talk or parents would talk. And I always just felt grateful that like people were recognizing these lives and recognizing our pain as parents. And it wasn't till years later, I mean, decades later, like my mother actually said to me, I can't relate to your pain. And I am proud of you, like for who you are. Just literally saying, like, I'm recognizing your pain, but I can't relate to it because I never lost a baby and I never lost a husband, And I
yeah,
was just like floored that like she said that to me because it's one of
right.
those things that people don't just like say to you, like,
No,
oh,
it takes a
you
lot
know.
of vulnerability and
Mhm.
self-awareness.
Mhm.
Wow.
So
Oh, I
I
think
think
that meant the
that's,
world to you.
yeah. And I think just women in general, if I meet someone, it's like, okay, like 1 in 3 women lose a baby. These are,
That's
it's
so high.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't know who you're talking to that perhaps did suffer a miscarriage. And I do think like even though my stuff is more rare than miscarriage, right? But I consider myself blessed in that I got to meet my babies. I got to hold my babies, right? Like some
Mm,
women don't get that. They don't even know if it's a boy or a girl. Like they really can't tell anything because it was so early. And I have pictures of my babies. Like I will always remember what they look like. And I got to do a funeral for my babies. I
yeah,
did everything for them and I honored them in that way. So I consider the time I had, like I was blessed to have that time and whatever time it was, and I believe in the afterlife. So I believe that they're okay and they're looking over us and everything. But it's still like the whole grief stages. I mean, they always say grief comes in waves, and it definitely does. It hits me at the weirdest moments, and I will just be like choked up crying. And it's like, and it's happened in front of my kids, and I just tell them, I'm sorry, like mommy is missing Manny and Lana today. I don't know what it is, but it's a beautiful thing to also teach your children about. They know they
Yeah.
have a brother and sister in heaven. They have literally like comforted me. Noah and Mia know that they're baby number three and baby number four. They know that they're not one and two. And so it's
Wow.
something we've always talked about. My daughter's even like drawn pictures, and
Oh,
it's really cute how
so
like
touching.
yeah, it's like interpreted by them in different ways. And they'll ask questions, and I'm just like so glad that they're like okay talking about it, and just like
Wow.
a normal thing for us that we know about them. And even my daughter will like explain my tattoos to people, and I don't even explain my tattoos to everyone because some of it is like Hawaiian, tribal artwork, but there's those different layered meanings in there, right? And so she's like, that's for my brother, that's for my sister.
That's so touching. Oh my God. What a sweetie pie.
So I just think one of the best things is to just always talk and be vulnerable with your kids and be honest, because they're going to notice if you're angry, they're going to notice if you're sad, right? So
Yeah.
whatever it is, whether it's like the business and I'm stressing out one day and I'm like, guys, mommy has a lot to do today. I really need your help with this, right? Just being
Yeah.
honest in that moment and saying, hey guys, I really have a tough day today. We're gonna have to, do X, Y, or Z tomorrow. And then same thing when I'm getting emotional and upset. It's like, I'm sorry, mommy's missing your brother and sister today. I don't, and just being honest in that moment instead of,
That's so beautiful.
yeah, I think like certain generations and certain schools of thought don't treat children like they're that smart, right? But I think Maria Montessori said that like a child by the age of 3 already knows that they're a whole person and you're
Mm.
like a separate person. And so certain, ways of teaching children is just really honoring them and how smart they are and how they can, like Maria Montessori makes you use real things, right? So no plastic. Right. So instead of a fake tea set with the plastic, it would be a real tea set. It would be glass. And you're teaching the child how to actually use the real items. So stuff like that,
Mm.
I think is kind of how I'm trying to raise my kids.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. Oh, we could talk forever. And I'm just so in love with your story and your passion, and you're a very passionate, kind person. And
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. I think it's such great work, and it deserves a beautiful highlight and spotlight. So where can people find you? Where can
Yes.
they join classes?
So you can follow DC Hula Girls, DCHULA Girls. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. You can text me. My number is like public on everything. It's a Hawaiian number.
I love it.
808 represent. Um, we have a recital this summer. So even if someone doesn't want to take classes, they can totally come enjoy our whole luau feast. I have a Hawaiian caterer coming, I have a Hawaiian musician coming, and we have fire dancers coming. So it's going to
Mm,
be the whole thing. Like I know that
wow.
it's not everybody gets to go to Hawaii and experience these type of shows. So it's
Yeah.
something that people have been asking me to bring back. And the last time I did this was before COVID.
Wow.
So it's kind of a huge undertaking to put, a program together this big, but it is always amazing. It's super fun. It's a lot of collaborating with different artists. And
Hmm.
it gives my students a chance to showcase what they've been learning all year. So they get to invite their family and friends that normally, like I said, because I'm very strict with my classes, it's a private class, it's a closed space. We don't really let people come watch, right? They have to sign up for the class, but anyone can drop into the class as long as they're female. And if you are a male dancer and want to learn hula or Pacific Island dancing, I know male teachers that I can recommend you to. So I always tell people like if you don't know where to go, I can connect you, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
part of the Hawaii State Society. I'm part of like all these different organizations in our area. And there's going to be different events coming up, especially in May. That is Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander month. So there's always like public free festivals, things that we perform at. So I try to post online when it's something that people can come watch. But as far as classes, just DM me on Instagram, text me, I run all the social media, so you're talking directly to me when you send a message. And it's 25 bucks for the hour to drop in and just check it out. No commitment, just check it out.
That's awesome. Oh my God. What a treat, Lydia. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. This has been awesome.
And you have to come and bring your baby.
Yeah. Plug. I love it. Good plug. Oh, wait. Oh no. What?
It says recording on my end. Is that what you're looking at?
Oh my God. What happened? I just hit